This is the One Piece Podcast, episode 486 for the week of Monday, September 11th, 2017. My name is Zach.
And my name is Ed.
And on today's show, we have very special guest translator for One Piece and Weekly Shonen Jump, Stephen Paul. How's it going, Stephen?
Hey, you got me, and that's it, I think.
I mean, you're more than enough, Stephen. I'm just going to say. Yeah.
Especially this week.
Yeah.
I run this show.
Yeah, and Ed is also running this show. This week we are going through One Piece, the magazine, Volume 2. Stephen, you want to give... Your name is Stephen. You want to give us a...
I answered to both.
That's good to know. Not to confuse our listeners at all. But do you want to give us a quick sneak peek as to what we have to look forward to in that?
Yeah, well, since we don't have any manga or any anime, I believe, we basically just have another interview segment, another long one with Oda. As we'll explain in the segment itself, the magazines are all they're basically all the same thing. Like, they have the same content. It's just different pieces of each segment in each issue of the magazine. So I kind of skipped over a lot of the descriptions of the various things. We did highlight a few. We talked about Oda's music choices, which I remember we had a lot of fun with the first time around, and a few other little tidbits. But it's pretty much
the music actually foreshadows one of his answers in the interview, so keep an eye out for that.
There you go. It's pretty much just once again, it's me reading the interview. We have a lot more kind of creative and personal talk from Oda's side, and you get to hear a lot about Rakugo. So get ready to learn.
That's what we're here for, to be honest, Stephen.
Yeah.
And there is no anime episode this week, which we all learned just before recording, I think.
Well, it's because there's the 27-hour History of Japan program.
Which sounds awesome. I'm just going to say.
But there were clips of it with Luffy and Zoro in the Sengoku Jidai, back in the Warring States period prior to the, I guess, the Shogun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably a good kind of foreshadowing for Wano. Not directly, but just generally. Not that I doubt there's anything in that would literally foreshadow it. But good to see that. Next week, I think there's an hour special for the somewhat spoiler alert Luffy versus Sanji fight. So look forward to that next week. That's going to be exciting.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I think this is a Dragon Ball Super special. This week, we're going to do a mini piece together. I don't think we got a lot of stuff this week. And we also have, as Stephen said, our walkthrough One Piece Magazine Volume 2. But before we start, there was some big news that just happened right before we started, to the point where I think it's shutting down the One Piece official website. And that is that there will be a new anime opening.
Praise God.
Yes. I don't know, Stephen, if you're able to open the site. Or we're able to look at it. Because at the moment, it's...
Okay. It looks like it's opening. I can see the title.
There you go.
Let's see.
There's a reason it's freezing, and that's because the person who will be singing the new opening, which is scheduled to premiere, I think October 1st. I'm using Google Translate to help me here.
Hope will be the name of the song. Yes.
Thank you, Stephen, for that confirmation. Google Translate's doing well so far for me here. To celebrate the 25th anniversary of the manga, will be sung by Amuro Namie.
No. That's the 25th anniversary of her career. Will be
20th anniversary of One Piece.
No.
I'm just going to add that on as if it were correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So let's listen to Steven. Steven, what does it say?
Zach, were you planning on editing this too?
That's ridiculous.
So yeah, the new... Okay, I have the article open now.
Yeah.
This is the 25th year since her debut of Namie Amuro, and she will be singing a new song, Hope, which will be the new opening for the One Piece anime. That it will be her second for One Piece after Fight Together. And... it will be the third time that she has worked with the anime, if you include the Adventure of Nebulandia special.
Which we
really, who does? Foxy's in it. That's good.
So I know Ed and I are huge fans of Fight Together, so I assume the two of us are very happy about this.
I mean, hey, as long as it fits in with where we're going in the story, that's always important in an opening. I hope for that.
Fair.
But
And Whole
yeah.
Cake Island, I feel like she could probably do a very good job with. If there were worse arcs that Amuro Namie could sing for. She's also very good. So
yeah, but it's Whole Cake Island, so it's gonna. It's obviously gonna be a little more probably peppy than Fight Together is, which is a good song, but it met the needs of that particular part of the anime, and hopefully this one will as well.
Yeah, I know there are other people. I won't name dude-esque names, but who might not be as happy about this. But
that's not fair. He hopes it's good too.
I know. I'm sure he hopes it's good. I just know we had disagreements as to Fight Together. I remember in our openings rankings way back. There's division among fans. You know what the best opening is. We've had a whole discussion about that. You could check out that episode. I believe it is Goop Troop Loop Lorp from 2 years ago. I think. So you can check that out. It's definitely on the Patreon. I think it's also just available on the feed as well. But you can check that and our entire archive out at patreon.com/OnePiecePodcast. With that, though, let's get into the show. You guys ready?
Yes.
Oh, I got you. You thought I didn't see you now, didn't you? You tried to sneak by me now, didn't you? Now give me what you promised me. Give it here. Come on.
All right, everybody, this week is a very special manga recap. We have Volume 2 of the One Piece magazine, and I am joined here with Steven, obviously.
That's me.
We are going to go mostly through the Oda interview in the magazine. Not going to go through each and every article like we did last time, but Steven, there were a few things in the magazine that you found interesting before we get to the interview.
Yeah, I guess we might as well just talk for a second. If you've seen all of the covers by now, there's definitely a pattern. They're all kind of done in the same way. This one has like I want to say like glow in the dark yellow. Like this is an extremely loud shade of yellow that they used for the cover.
It's alternate ambulance color.
Yeah. You don't want to see this in the rear view mirror when you're driving down the road. Yes, I guess I was a little more of a fan of the red, but the next one, the blue one, which is the Volume 3 cover, which we will get to in a future episode, I think is pretty sharp looking too. So that's kind of, that is kind of the pattern here, which is that once the second edition of this little 3-part series came out, it quickly became clear from flipping through, okay, pretty much all of these sections are the same. They just continue over the 3 different magazines. So, everything that we talked about in Volume 1 is essentially just continued here. Either they interview a different person for their creative people's interviews, or they have extra more pages of his little like alternate manga about Luffy, Ace, and Sabo, and
Yamato has more weightlifting, and there's more
yes.
Things copied out of Wikipedia in the Pirates
Encyclopedia. Right. Yeah. So I kind of went through just about all of the different things that are found in these magazines, but I think
the one thing that I wanted to mention is this Toshio Asakuma.
Yeah, that's
feature.
Right.
That was one thing that I did find interesting. I can't understand any of it. It's a whole big article, but I love those figures and that color spread. So.
Yeah, I wish I could drop some tidbits of knowledge from this, but unfortunately, I will admit I'm still in the process of reading through the second one here. Obviously, I read through the interview first and foremost, which is what we're going to be spending most of the segment on. But I have not finished all of the various articles, but I'm looking forward to reading that one because. I think that's one name that I think most of us remember from when this little collaboration happened a couple years ago.
It was a big deal when it happened. It was 3 or 4 years ago, actually. And we do see here that Whitebeard is a polar bear, Ace is a black panther, Blackbeard is a hippo.
Yeah.
Cool.
I will admit too, I did not expect this guy to look like this with the like bleach blonde faux hawk sort of thing,
and gray soul patch.
Yes, yeah. He looks like a cool guy. But yeah, there was one thing that I did want to single out because I think we had the most fun going over that the last time, which is the music playlist that Oda puts together to go over, you know, a certain part of the arc or, you know, whatever kind of sequence of events is happening, and he needs to feel.
I remember I had a point about this, and we're going to get to it because I recognize where he probably knows a few of these songs from.
Okay. Yeah. So if you remember last time, it was the Big Mom kind of, you know, Candyland, Alice in Wonderland themed stuff. All the stuff that you've probably been hearing in the anime in terms of the influences. And this time he put together, I guess it is technically, he describes it as the gangster theme. And so he pulls out the scene with you know, Luffy and Bedge and everybody crowded around the table for their big meeting.
I don't know if I would consider a lot of this.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
that's an interesting term to use for most of these artists.
Yeah. Well, it's I don't know. They're smooth. Let's go through this.
Yeah, it's more like Motown music to me.
Yeah, so we have a lot of kind of classic soul artists, I would say, and then some more kind of explicitly like mobster style things. So let's see, there's some Bobby Womack. This one I know Joey would like. It's just literally a track, M12 from Jingi Naki Tatakai Hiroshima Kosohen, which means it is the battles without honor or humanity. The Hiroshima battle. I'm not sure which what the actual you know, westernized title of this particular movie of this series, but that is of course the famous kind of very what's the word, like unromanticized movie series about the Yakuza.
Right. And just at this point, I'll mention that the next one, I Gotcha, is off the Reservoir Dogs soundtrack, and Jungle Boogie, number 8 on the list, is off the Pulp Fiction soundtrack. So they're not gangster music, but it's from gangster movies.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, we have some Earth, Wind, and Fire, Rainy Night in Georgia, Soul Man from the Blues Brothers.
They dress like gangsters.
Yeah. Yes. Or Hasidic Jews, wasn't that the line in the movie? Yeah, let's see. What are some more funny ones? He has a capsule song from his buddy Yasutaka Nakata, who he has collaborated with on a lot of the movie soundtracks, and DJ Jazzy Jeff and the French Prince.
Boom, shake the room. And and rounding out the list is a track from the Rage Against the Machine cover album Renegades, originally by Cypress Hill, How I Could Just Kill a Man, which is actually a good track. Not the best track off of that album. That would be their cover of Bob Dylan's Maggie's Farm.
Oh boy,
it's a good album.
Yeah, so there you go. There's the gangsters. I'm not sure what he's going to do for the next one. I could have sworn maybe I'm thinking of like a tweet or some kind of promotional thing that was separate from the magazine where they had teased that this was going to be what the second one, or maybe it was Oda himself, because he does write his little comments about the magazine. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what he comes up with for the third list, because
it might be very traditional Japanesey if we're going by a Wano theme, possibly.
Could be, because he's probably planning out a lot of that stuff now, and obviously we know he's been thinking about that for a long time.
And one last thing before we get into the interview about music. Zach today posted Oda's 9/11 memorial message that came out in 2001, and if you look closely, you can see that combining Luffy's shirt in the background of the color spread, it's a Beatles lyric. It says, "One thing I can tell you is you got to be free," from Come Together. And it's not the only time he's done that, because also I have a poster of this up in my office here. But there's one that's "Live a Life of Ease," which is a line from Yellow Submarine.
All right. That's cool.
Yeah. But so let's if there's anything else you want to mention before we get into this?
I guess the one thing I would say, which I kind of want to do if we're ever, just to throw this idea out there, if we're ever at a loss, we want to put together a segment of some fun stuff. I feel like we should go back because I did kind of gloss over this. It's very near the end of all the magazines. Is the section where they ask questions to 4 of Oda's different editors. And I think when we did the last one, I hadn't really gone through that one yet. But after reading them, there's some pretty funny and insightful stuff. So maybe sometime, in the months ahead, once we've already done all of the other material we'll get out of these, that I think would be a fun segment to read through all of those. But yeah, I guess let's get into Oda's second of his 3 long interviews in the magazine.
All right.
And we will pick up with a question about Oda's sense of imagination, or the power of his imagination. You talked about last time you talked about as long as you have the ability to imagine stuff, you can draw places that you've never been. What is the foundation, or where do you get that imagination from? And Oda says, well, I think that came from my childhood, because that was a time when you couldn't just, or at least I couldn't just get anything that I wanted. You didn't have all this stuff, and you had to fill in all of these blanks with your imagination. And if there's anything that made me different from others at that age in that sense, was probably that I liked Rakugo. I said, oh, you liked Rakugo as a kid? And Oda's like, yeah. I would always listen to Rakugo on the radio. And I happen to think that taking in information by audio through your ears really helps fashion your sense of imagination. Because you need your mind to work at the to describe, to fill in these blanks of what all these characters look like in this story inside your head. And I liked similar shows on TV, like there's Shoten, which is a very, very long running comedy show. But I always just wanted to hear more about Rakugo. And so I was able to fill that desire through the radio. And I was about in elementary school when I started listening to Rakugo on the radio. And that was fun. But when I tried to talk to my friends at school about Rakugo, they did not get it at all. So when I got to middle school and I would have friends over, I would be like, oh, man, I have to explain. I have to show them how cool this is. And so I would play a tape that I recorded off the radio of Rakugo. And within about 5 minutes of starting the tape, they would all be just kind of wandering around my room looking at stuff. And I'm like, what? No, we're just getting to the good part. Why aren't you listening? I can't believe this. And so they didn't get it at all.
It's like kids were into vaudeville or the Three Stooges. In this
country. Yes. Very, very old fashioned, even at that time.
Makes me wonder if he's watched the anime. It's a good show.
I don't know. So when did you listen, or whose influence was it that caused you to start listening to Rakugo? And he said, oh, it's my parents, my mom and dad. I would listen to recorded tapes of old Manzai, 2-man comedy team and Rakugo performances. And I would listen to them with them. And, I just started to get into it. And then I started, actually seeking out the programs on the radio to listen to on my own. And I would record them and I would just play them and listen to them over and over and over again on my own time. And, it was like I couldn't even get to sleep. I would have to have it playing in the background or else I couldn't fall asleep. There's something about me as a little grade school kid that I would fall asleep to the sound of the old guy doing his Rakugo stories. I have an older sister, but for some reason I was the only one.
Wait. Oda has an older sister?
Yes.
Apparently.
That's what it says. Yes.
Wow, never knew that.
But for some reason I was the only one who got into Rakugo. When I was in middle school in Kumamoto at the I guess you would call it like the Citizen Center or something like that, they had a Rakugoka, as they call them, a performer come And I was like just so obsessed with Rakugo at the time that for a birthday present, my parents bought me a ticket and to go see it. And so I went with my parents, and I was just like over the moon. I was so excited. I think that was about in 7th grade. And so the interviewer says, okay, so if you're a novice to Rakugo, are there any pieces, any performances that you would recommend? Because these are, just for your edification, like Rakugo stories are kind of like traditional in a sense. Like it's sort of like classical music in a way.
It's up to the performer to make it their own.
Right. But they're kind of like, it's sort of like if you were telling Aesop's fables or something like that, and you were kind of elaborating on them in your own way or putting your own twist on them, but it's still kind of the same basic formulas, but there's tons and tons of them. So Oda said, now I have to apologize here because I don't really know what these are actually about, but he does a little explanation here. So Oda says, I recommend Kaen Daiko, which would be like the flaming taiko drum. And I think there are lots of people who happen to enjoy that particular story. There's also there's a great story called Bunshichi Motoi. And when I was in elementary school, I remember really enjoying a story called Tenshiki. And the kanji for that means like turning and like losing steam or something. And when I was, so this is about a priest who is feeling sick. And so he goes to a doctor, and the doctor says, do you have tenshiki? And you don't know what that is. He's like, what is it? He doesn't, but you're too embarrassed. The monk is too embarrassed to ask, what is a tenshiki? So he pretends that he understands what it is. And so then the priest goes to a kid or a younger, like an apprentice, and says, hey, do you have any tenshiki? And the kid doesn't know what it is either. And he says, okay, well, now you have to look it up. And so he forces this kid to find out what it is. And it turns out that tenshiki is a word for fart. But when
it's just an old but for joke.
Yes. And then when the apprentice realizes what it was that the priest was forcing him to look up, he lies and says that it's a sakazuki, the cup for making toasts and such, as we know from One Piece. And so because of that, the priest then goes around and embarrasses himself by talking about, oh, this is just a wonderful tenshiki, very very fine tenshiki, and so on. And so he says there's lots of great Rakugo stories, so if you're interested, you should really go and check it out. And so yeah, there's a lot of the comedic Rakugo. It involves puns and things like that, where it becomes an elaborate part of the story. So you can see kind of where the entertainment part of that comes in. And then they ask, well, who are your favorite Rakugo performers? And Oda says, I don't really have like one guy in particular, but there is at least once a year I go to meet who he calls the human treasure, Yanagiya Kosanji. Master Kosanji Yanagiya, and he meets with him once a year. How does that happen? How did that come about? And it says, well, every year Toshio Suzuki from Studio Ghibli holds a Rakugo like meeting or a gathering or something like that. And so when I was appearing on Toshio Suzuki's radio show way back, I was talking about how I liked Rakugo, and then he started inviting me to come to this this little event, and ever since then I go every single time.
Be in that room, my God.
Yeah, apparently quite a lot of experience there. So the interviewer says, okay, so if you like it that much, did you ever, as a kid, did you ever think like, oh, I want to do Rakugo, I want to try that out? And Oda says, I never ever thought of that. It never crossed my mind. I love Rakugo, but I also loved drawing, back then. And so I, it was, the mangaka was what I wanted to be, and that was always what I wanted to be. And then after I actually became a mangaka, and I realized that like the building blocks for these stories and the way that you put these plots together, I realized that I just kind of had a natural touch, a foundation for them. And then I was like, oh, I wonder if that's because I just listened to so many of these Rakugo stories. It wasn't, it was just a happy coincidence, basically. It wasn't like he was listening to them in order to get better at, telling stories. It was just something that happened to come in handy when he was actually in that position. So does that mean that, being a fan of Rakugo actually helps you out in writing stories? Yeah, I'd say so. Same thing with the same thing applies between old Rakugo and movies and Jidaigeki, the period pieces. All these things that people call classic or classics. They seem to get overshadowed these days by all the new stuff that's out there. But it's the fact that they're still around today is a sign that those were the stories that had, they had the right structure in place. They're things that are entertaining and worthwhile every time you watch them. You can watch them over and over again, and they're good every time. The reason that I don't run out of stories and ideas is because I know so many of these things. I've gone through them, so many of them. Plus, I do try to bring in new ideas and new things, but it's kind of hard to make use of them, especially explicit use of them, because if you try to do something that is kind of close and similar to something that's new and fresh, then people are going to say like, oh, I recognize that you're doing that thing. But the older stories are, they're like fairy tales or something. Everyone knows them, but everyone also knows that the construction, their foundation is entertaining and they're good. And you can just attach whatever you want to those stories, and they'll still be good. So yeah, I feel like probably the closest thing, as far as what he was just talking about, the closest thing, particularly for us, is when we look at little details where we're like, that seems kind of Game of Thrones-ish. He's like right. That. This detail seems like it could have come from this season or whatever. And that's probably the sort of thing that he's trying to be not too obvious about.
Right.
So the interviewer continues, speaking of classics, I've heard that you are a big fan of the period pieces, the samurai stories. And Oda says, yes, I love them. When I was in about high school through college, there was a time where I was just watching tons and tons of movies. I would watch like 3 movies a day. And I would just get bored of the stuff that was set in modern day. I started wanting to see more and more like different stuff, weird stuff, out of the ordinary. So I started getting into these sort of subculture cult movies and old movies. So when I was in that period, that was when I watched a whole bunch of period pieces. And there's just something about these older stories that they stick with you. Sometimes it's the ways that the dialogue is just very peculiar and distinct. Maybe I just like the way that things are always portrayed very theatrically with the samurai stories. They're very over the top. All these stories, these movies and manga and whatnot, they're all created. They're all made up. So you might as well don't be shy about doing something cool, like make things look as cool as they possibly can. All these old period pieces, like they have that sort of kabuki style where they just perform very theatrical movements and stylizations and things like that. And nowadays, people want it to be as realistic as possible. And when it feels like you're just watching a documentary with these actors, that's what really draws the the praise from the critics and the audiences and so on. But I happen to like those stories where it's all a big act that these characters are putting on. And, I want them to have that look on their face when they do something cool, like, hell yeah, I know it. That was awesome. So, that's why, perhaps that's why when I do my don sound effect in my manga, maybe that, is sort of an influence from the samurai, the period pieces, where it's like it's a signal to the reader to be like, hey, everyone, check this out. Mm-hmm. So that's I feel like we found some of your roots in an unexpected place, Oda-san, and you happen to have a very nice rhythmic touch to your dialogue as well. Do you read lots of books, of novels, like just text, prose? And Oda says, I don't really read that many books, but I do like music. So the rhythm of the words is very important to me. And there's something about the Japanese language too. The Japanese combinations, sentences with the combinations of 5 and 7 just have a very good rhythm to us. And so when I want people to read it with a nice tempo, with a proper tempo, you do the haiku thing with a 5-7-5 rhythm. I will focus on that. I'll think about that as I'm writing. And apparently those are like those numbers aren't arbitrary. They people have done studies on text and found that there's just something about those numbers in the Japanese language that make them very special. But it wasn't that I used them because I heard about that and I was like, okay, I'll do that. It was more like I found that, in my personal experience that, oh, I kind of like that. And then I looked it up and realized, oh, hey, that's a 5-7-5. And that the, lines of dialogue can work the same way.
Stephen, is that something that you notice? You probably more familiar with Oda's language than anybody else in this country.
Yeah. Actually, I have not really focused on that or noticed it that much. I mean, there's definitely been times, like with some of Bon Clay's famous scenes where he obviously really obviously makes it apparent through just drawing it in the panel and stuff like that, that it's supposed to be read as a haiku. But I honestly have not really noticed that in in the regular dialogue scenes. But it is true, I think, especially that if you compare rhyming, the ways that we would feel about that stuff in English would be rhymes. We would have you want to have the right number of syllables so that the meter is proper. But I feel like we're not as fixed on a particular number as long as it just is a number that matches from line to line. Right. And we have all these rhymes that you can do, with various letters. But for whatever reason, in Japanese, just because of the construction of the language, you don't get the rhymes, even though they do have all these syllables that are, it's the same vowel with a different consonant in front. The concept of using that as a rhyme is not nearly as strong. It's not as traditional to match things like that. It's much more about the number of syllables, and so they don't particularly care if stuff ends with the same vowel or whatever when they do song translations and stuff. If you listen to Japanese versions of nursery rhymes and famous songs that we would know in the West, there's they almost never rhyme, but they're very particular about the number of syllables that they use. So it's just one of those things. But to continue with Oda's answer, When there are times where I feel like the 575 pattern is too obvious, I will go out of my way. I'll try to do something to break it down, to kind of twist the formula a little bit so that it's not quite so obvious. So I play around with that kind of stuff. Maybe there may be stuff that the readers don't recognize, but I think it might be the sort of thing that people who are adept at drafting this stuff and writing up their dialogue when they work on the story. It may be the sort of thing that everyone kind of thinks about, whether consciously or unconsciously.
Right.
And so the next question is, so speaking of more modern stuff, do you watch comedy shows like stand-up routines and what they call konto, which are they're more like skits with props and stuff. And Oda says, I watch a ton of that stuff. I really love M1 and King of Konto, and those are like the two big like contests where they have these duos, these pairs of guys that do their special routines, and they have
like Japan's Got Talent or something. Or?
Yeah, pretty much. Okay. They have like senior, like the super famous guys, like the downtown, like Matsumoto, guys like that, and they'll tear these guys apart when.
And just to say, that. For people who don't know, downtown is the people who can't laugh and then get hit on the ass every New Year's. That's That's downtown.
Mm-hmm. Yes, very probably the most famous.
They've apparently looking at the history, they've like redefined manzai for their generation, and then they pretty much changed it completely.
Yeah, so guys like that who judge these up and comers, and it's a highly. I've watched some of those in the past, and they are pretty funny, and it's definitely how you learn about who's the next big act, because they went really far in M1 and everybody was talking about them, yada yada yada. So Oda says, as far as the comedians go, the gaining, I don't really know like the super obscure ones, but I do listen to on the radio again. I listen to the tournaments with the up and coming and the newcomers and amateur artists. So I probably know more than the average person with as far as who's out there nowadays. So do comedians' jokes, do they help you with your manga? And Oda says, well, actually, when it comes to performed comedy stuff, gyaga as they call it, it really there really isn't much connection between that and manga, because what they do is like having funny people. It works because you have funny people who are doing even funnier things, and it just doesn't work that way in manga. You can't build it the same way. Just like the fundamental nature of the laughs is a bit different. So I think maybe the closest to to comedy in manga is like the again the kind of really over the top sort of old fashioned stuff that the Drifters, which is an old comedy group, and then the Yoshimoto Shinkigeki, which is the Yoshimoto agency, which is a huge comedy agency. They have a stage show that they do like weekly or something like that, monthly, something like that, and they'll have their stable of actors do it, but it's it's a full on comedic play. It's something about those is easier to explain. It's easier to get across to kids on the page. Oda-san, you also like music a lot. You've mentioned some of the background songs that you listen to while you are working on the manga. Are there any artists in particular, any musicians that you are that you're focused on, that you're into these days? And he says, it's hard to pick because I'm always looking around for different stuff all the time. As far as new artists go, personally, I am into Tensai Bando, or Genius Band. There's just something about it's very light and relaxing. It's kind of laid back. There's something I like about that. I will admit, me personally, I don't know what this sounds like. I have not heard of this group, so maybe we'll have to go look it up. Do you have people? Do people tell you who the new artists are? Like, check this out, or do you go around and look for new music on your own? And Oda says, this is kind of a pattern here. In my case, I get a lot of my information from the radio. So I just have the radio on, and I start to hear stuff on the radio, and I'm like, I wonder what this song is. And so that's just his thing. He listens to the radio a lot. Now, aside from genre, so it could be any genre. If you could meet any person, who would you want to meet the most?
We're getting into like what was it called? The actor studio questions now.
And Oda's answer is, well, I've pretty much met them all by this point.
Just a comment on being very, very famous, I think.
Yeah. But he says, but if it's like anyone at all, anyone you could imagine, I would probably like to meet Quentin Tarantino.
God damn it, I knew it.
Yep. All right. Funny. In the next segment here, let's see. When you were in high school, there's a rumor that you said to one of your friends, I'm gonna be famous one day, so you should get an autograph from me. Is this true? And Oda said, I did not give them an autograph. I might have said that I will be famous one day, but I don't think I told them what I was going to be famous for. There weren't any art classes when I was in high school, so nobody really knew that I could draw at that time. I went back home and then I drew there, and that was that is true whether I had art class or not. That was always the case. Were you always good at art? When I've been drawing ever since I was a kid, so I can draw anything. I had that confidence when it came to my art, and as long as you have that confidence, you can be a mangaka, or I can be a mangaka. I probably, that's what I was thinking at the time. And it was about 17 when I actually felt the reality of what goes behind that statement.
Within 5 years, he was serialized.
Up till that point, I thought, I can easily be a top manga artist. And then one day I was like, oh, right, I have to think of a story too. I can't just draw stuff. And then I started to panic. At any rate, when I was a kid, I would draw, illustrations, and I would draw manga-like stuff. I would just scribble things into, the margins of my notebooks and so on. And when I was in middle school, when I did have an art class, I would draw like sort of Akira Toriyama style dragons and things like that. But the art teacher did not look kindly upon manga style art. Until that point, I had always had what they call fives. That would be an A. I'd always had A's, fives in modeling and in art and so on. That was the only time that I got a 4. So you got a B. And I hated it because it was like, I drew a great illustration. Like, this doesn't make sense. And I couldn't figure out like what is the difference between the art that these teachers want and manga. And that shows you how much I was thinking, how obsessed I was with manga.
Imagine Oda with as Lisa Simpson, like hurting Mrs. Hoover's hand, making her change the grade.
Yeah. I've heard that when you were a kid, you also played soccer. Did you ever think about, maybe I could be a soccer player? And Oda says, no, I knew that I could not be a pro as a soccer player, because there were all these people, all these other kids around me who were better than me. So I knew, like, okay, if I'm going to be anything, it's going to be a manga artist. I was like, wow, so you can just draw manga all day and you can make a living like that? Like, what kind of a grown up life is that? Like, man, that's got to be the easiest job in the world.
That's good.
And that he learned about that when he was about in kindergarten, when he read Fujiko Fujio's manga, which is about making manga.
And that's one of the authors of Doraemon, for those who
right.
do not know.
Yeah, and that was one of the Color Walk interviews that he did with the remaining the surviving member of the two-man duo, and he talked about that having been a very formative experience. So I read that, and then I was like, wow, these guys are adults and they're just drawing this, and they're actually making a living off of that. Like it wasn't even fair. It was like, oh my God, this is amazing. What a great way to be an adult. There are people who are allowed to not go to work or to a company. I was just stunned by this. So the next one is about what time, or how old were you when you started drawing serious manga, when you actually tried putting together real manga? That was about in middle school. That was when I started, actually taking it seriously. And when I was 17, I submitted a piece called "Wanted" for the Weekly Shonen Jump Tezuka Award, and I ended up getting I think it's a special mention. It's like a runner-up prize, and that was kind of how I got started from there. And I've heard that you did not, you did not go as Eiichiro Oda. You went under a pen name. And Oda says yes, when I submitted Wanted, I used the pen name Tsukihi Mizuki Kondo. And I'm trying to remember, because it was just in that piece from the Toriko author a few months ago, where he was talking about that, because he had seen that piece, and
that was believe from the omake in Jump, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to. And I think they split it, like it was supposed to be Kondo Tsukihi Mizuki, like that would be the name order. But basically what he did is he just took it is moon, fire, water, tree, gold, and earth, and what that actually refers to is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So that's basically what his pen name was. And so that was when I was in high school, and I didn't want anyone to know about it. I didn't want my friends to know. I was like, I'm only going to tell my friends once I'm an actual pro. It was I didn't want to like go around bragging to people about it when I didn't have it, down on lock at that point. So I figured, like if I win this prize, if I don't end up actually becoming a professional, then it doesn't matter. He really did not want to be considered half-assed manga artist. So he thought, okay, that's what I'll do. I'll use this pen name, and then once I'm a pro and I'm in the magazine, then I will use my real name and show that to everybody, because that's how you brag about it, because you're like, hey, that's my name. Everyone knows my name. But
it's nice that there's thought behind this decision.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really cool that he thinks that.
Mm-hmm. But looking back on it now, I completely forgot to. I completely forgot about it. He said if I had done my debut under my pen name, everyone might be calling me Tsukihimizu-san, or maybe Tsuki or something like that. I was like, wow, that's kind of hard to say. So yeah, I think that helps us as readers, that we can just call him Oda. After that, how many one-shots did you put out before your serial started in Weekly Shonen Jump? After Wanted, I did the Future Present from God. That was something that I drew when I was laboring under a mistaken premise. So I went to college in Kumamoto for just 1 year, and I drew it at that time. And I sent it in thinking that it was going to be in a special bonus, like a quarterly issue of Weekly Shonen Jump. But I was actually wrong about that. It was in a magazine called Monthly Shonen Jump Original. And so when the editor who was assigned to him, he asked him, okay, once I've drawn all this out, okay, where is this going to be? Where is this going to run? And he said, oh, Monthly Shonen Jump. But I was like, oh, I want to be a serial. I want to have a serial in Weekly Shonen Jump. So I tried to like resubmit or like to I tried to start over the process all over again. I was like, oh my God, it's like I walked in the entrance and then I took a wrong turn right inside the door. But I really, I didn't know anything about this stuff at the time. And then after that, I drew a story called Ikiyako, which is about a Buddhist priest who fights, a fighting priest. And
looks a lot like Zoro from the Jidai Geki specials, actually.
Right.
And on the cover of the Wanted trade paperback.
Mm-hmm. And so that one I submitted for the Hop Step Award, which I believe has a different name now. But that at that point, I finally felt like, okay, now I'm standing at the entrance to Weekly Shonen Jump. And after that, I finally got a proper Jump editor. And then I was, drawing one-shots and working as an assistant. And that's kind of where it really started rolling. What kind of things did you hear from your editors when you were just starting out? And Oda says, well, I got, lots of things got nixed. They got turned down. I heard lots of criticisms. But the one thing that I especially remember, what they told me over and over was you need to make the characters stronger. You need to make them stick out more, accentuate the characteristics. And at the time, like, I didn't really understand exactly what that meant. Now I do. There's it's the sort of thing like when people who are starting out and they say like, I can't create characters. I don't know how to do it. You can't really explain it to them in words. It's probably not the same. It's just something, it's a sense that you need to have or to build. And the funny thing is new manga artists, people who are just starting out, a lot of them are pretty eccentric. They're pretty weird. So the easiest way to do this is to give them the advice to just draw yourself, put yourself into it, and then draw your friends, like the ones who are the most entertaining. And that might be the easiest and the quickest way to help people understand what it means to get, how to get the grasp of drawing a stronger character. About the time that I drew Romance Dawn before doing One Piece, I felt like I understood who Luffy was as a character, but then other people started saying like, man, this guy is kind of like, this guy's a little bit messed up, like he's a little bit sinister. And I wonder if maybe that was because I was putting too much of him into, or I was designing too much of him going along the lines of the story. So in other words, like sort of calculating, okay, he needs to be like this. Like as the author, I need him to do this or that. And I thought, like at the beginning, I thought, oh, I understand Luffy perfectly, and so I was just sort of forcing him around, like I was ordering, like, do this, do that, now do this, and it just wasn't natural. And that was something that, stuff about characters, advice about characters is what I learned most from those early editors, and then my the senpais that I had when I was working as an assistant. So speaking of your assistant days, I've heard that you were the youngest assistant when you were doing that. And Oda says, yes, I was easily the youngest because I quit college after just 1 year rather than completing it.
Now that I think about it, that's a pretty bold move, actually.
Yeah, no, it definitely tells you a lot about his confidence in himself. So lots of people, he says, at the time, especially, lots of people went through, college entirely. They graduated, and then, then they set their foot into the world of manga. So pretty much anywhere that I went, anywhere that I was working, I was the youngest. Did you have any fellow assistants that you viewed as rivals? They said, yeah, I felt a rivalry, and now we're good friends as well. But one of his fellow assistants at Watsuki Sensei's studio, who was Hiroyuki Take of Shaman King fame, and we would talk to each other about, oh, here's what I'm doing for the next one shot that I'm doing, and he would show me his art, and it was like so good, and I remember just being like, oh my god, this guy's amazing, like he's so good. And so we would always talk about what manga was going on at the time, and what our plans were, and so on and so forth. Is there anything that you did that you really screwed up when you were, before your serialized debut, when you were starting out, that you just really messed up on? And Oda says, now I don't remember this myself. This is just what other people told him. But he went to one of the big ceremonial award shows, probably the Tezuka Awards or something like that, and he was just a total newbie, total nobody. And then he went up to Motomiya Sensei, who is oh gosh, I wish I could remember. I think he might have been the guy who did like the Sakigake Otokojuku series, like some of the old like late 70s kind of precursor to like the real crazy like Fist of the North Star type stuff in the 80s.
What did you say his name was again?
Motomiya is his last name, and I think it might be Hiroshi Motomiya. That might be a different artist. Anyways, he went up to him and he was like, "Oh man, your manga's pretty good." And I said something like that, and I didn't say it without any malice, but it was a very flippant statement to make, and so everyone around me was just like, "Oh my god, what is he doing?" And oh wow, that's quite a bold rookie, as the interviewer says. And apparently Motomiya Sensei wasn't angry about it, so it turned out for the best. But
everyone around him was just horrified, though. Probably.
Yeah. Afterwards, it turns out lots of times I hear these things about after the fact. I hear like, oh yeah, you said this, and like everyone was just freaking out around you. But I just don't, and I have no idea what it was that I was doing. So yeah, basically the point of my story is that when I was much younger, I was very rude, apparently. All right, last segment here. So we're talking about the author comments on the inside flap of each volume of the manga. You seem to cover a wide variety of topics for your author comments. I noticed oh, thanks. I really put a lot of thought into them because apparently, people really like them. They put high expectations into my comments. But I always try to make it as meaningless as possible, just as try to be as silly and fluffy, as lighthearted as possible.
Right.
I have a lot of memories of my own, as far as like having getting these collected volumes as a kid, and I would read the author's comments in their little pages where they would get to write about their own stuff. And they would just talk about all the horrors that they went through on the job and how tired they were. And I decided that I'm not going to write that kind of stuff because nobody wants to hear you complain about something. Like if it's not like you telling the readers like, oh my God, I just feel like crap. It's not like they're going to feel it or understand. You're just saying it to them. So why try to say it at all? Instead, entertain them. Say something silly, say something funny. It would be, if they're going to read it, it's much better that they enjoy it than feel your pain or whatever. And they say, "Oh, wow, that's that's very thoughtful of you." And in the SBS corner, you always give in to the fans' demands. You try to live up to their expectations. And Oda says, "Yeah, I get all these requests. Like draw so and so as a kid, or draw gender swaps. Do this, do that." And at first I started, at first I was just, drawing these things for these people, like, oh yeah, just have some fun. Let's just do this. Let's whip this up real quick. And then I started getting, requests from Bandai about turning them into products. And I was like, oh my God, wait, I have to take this seriously. and then from the next point on, then I got really nervous about it. But yeah, he says basically, I just want to have fun with this. When people say like, oh, draw this, draw that, I just, I want to respond to that. I want to be like, yeah, sure. Here you go. Here you go. Let's try this. Let's try that. Just like I used to do with my friends. I don't think of my own, art in terms of like value, like, okay, how much is each line of this painting worth to you, to me? I want to be like I want to be the big brother, the older guy in the neighborhood who will draw stuff for you. Although now he says I'm more like the old guy in the neighborhood who will draw stuff for you. He's the Osan.
Yeah.
Wow. And that's who I am. That's what I want to be, is just the local guy who likes drawing. So the funny and clever guy who will find a way to complete whatever crazy thing the kids ask of him. So the interviewer says, okay, I think I understand some of the reasons why your author's materials in your corner segments are so entertaining. Thank you very much. So back for the last question, going back to the topic of your manga, can you tell us a little bit about your future plans? And oh yeah, here we go. Back to the serious stuff. And Oda says, well, I'm not going to tell you when this will happen, but in the future, I will be drawing Wano Kuni, the Kingdom of Wano. So please look forward to that. There are all these new characters that I really, really want to draw. I'm good at creating characters, but when I make too many of them, then it becomes, the real trouble becomes how to handle all of them and to juggle all of them. So I'm currently right in the middle of the process of building up the cast and then cutting it back down, and refining it. I find that coming up with and tracing the contours of the story ahead is always really fun, because there's no responsibility to it. It's the term, it's the bit of time that might be the most fun creatively for me.
It's because it's his time. He doesn't have to share it with anyone else, I think.
Right. He doesn't have to share it with anyone else, and he doesn't have to answer. He can throw out anything he wants. He doesn't have to bring it back around and make it meaningful. He can figure out all that stuff later. So at any rate, I think there's going to be a bunch of characters, and it's going to get real wild and fun. So please look forward to that. And also, as long as I don't forget about it, I really want to draw something piratey. Something. There's just something about One Piece that, even though they're pirates, it seems like they're always kind of fighting on land. The ocean stuff is hard to do because it's very elaborate. You need more panels to draw actions and stuff. I'm assuming he's referring to like ship battles and things like that. But I kind of want to draw stuff like that. Although maybe, who knows? Maybe my mind will change about that. So there you go. Thank you very much. That was a very interesting interview that we had. And that will be all the questions for today. Thank you for your time. And that is it for the second of Oda's 3 interviews.
There will be another one. So we have that.
Yes.
And also, I looked up the name of the author that Oda was rude to, apparently, at the Tezuka Awards. That would probably be Hiroshi Motomiya, the author of Salaryman Kintaro.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And there's one more thing I wanted to look at in this magazine before we wrap up. They have a history of One Piece collaboration, and it's just ridiculous merchandise. That they have the One Piece cell phone. It's pages 76 and 77 of the magazine. Okay. They have the Hello Kitty crossover, a One Piece cell phone, One Piece watches, golden One Piece PS3, like drink tumblers, like lowball glasses, the 1000 Serena minivan.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I'm glad that that's memorialized somewhere, and even if it is on the centerfold of the magazine here. Brooks, Shark guitar, the Converse Chuck Taylors, the swimsuits, and what looks to be a golden figure of Luffy. I can't really see where that... I guess it's from a Film Gold promotion.
Yeah. That is a solid gold.
Oh my god!
You see the numbers there? What is that? See, the small one... The small one is 650,000 yen, so that's
surprisingly
about
cheap. That's only 6,500.
$6.5 grand. Yeah, and then the big one is they didn't put commas here. 20 million yen, so that would be more like 200 grand.
Holy shit!
Yeah,
that is hilarious. Oh my god. But yeah, that's it for the One Piece second issue of the One Piece magazine recap. As always, there is more interesting stuff to look at in there. So if there's something that there's still reason to pick it up, even if you didn't hear everything you wanted on this segment. There's a lot of good stuff in there as well. So, all right, let's move on to the next segment.
Okay.
Get down, 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 get down.
This is the Piece Together segment where we take your questions, comments, and theories. I am back. Thank you, Ed and Steven, for taking us through the One Piece magazine.
Fantastic.
No problem.
And Ed, you have a name we missed on last week's Patreon segment.
Yes, that's Stephen Solomon. Thank you for being a Patreon supporter, and sorry for forgetting you.
Yes, Mr. Solomon83. So sorry about that. Please, if you don't hear your name on it, let us know. It's probably an oversight on my part, not Ed's part. Ed does a great job reading.
I just read what's put in front of me, man. I'm
yes.
like Ron Burgundy over here.
And same goes for our next segment, which you could only submit to exclusively on Patreon, and that is, Ed?
DSPs.
And the first question comes from Morgul, which I hope I pronounced that correctly. So I've been rewatching the old Saban. I should probably know how to say the name of this.
Saban.
Saban.
Zach, it's Hebrew.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah, it's the Democratic Party donor Chaim Saban. That's his company.
Wow.
Yeah.
So not only do I have Steve definitely yelling at me right now through the airwaves, but I also have all of my people yelling at me. Anyway, so I've been rewatching the old Saban dub of Dragon Ball Z via the Rock the Dragon DVD box set that Funimation put out a few years ago. I remember that. And I got to thinking, what if Funimation would do a similar thing with the 4Kids dub of One Piece? The DBZ DVD was aimed at older nostalgia market and included a booklet was full of jokes and information on the censorship practices at the time, and talked about how such changes had reached meme status on the internet these days. Do you think that the 4Kids version will ever reach meme status?
No, and because Funimation has no interest in promoting that it ever existed because they don't own it. They owned that Ocean dub. It was produced by Ocean Group under the license of Funimation. So there was really no problem with getting the audio. It was just that, for a long time they were just embarrassed probably by it, or they wanted to get away from that. And with 4Kids, it's not owned by them, so that
4Kids has ceased to exist, unlike Sentai Filmworks, which I know has redeveloped from ADV, and there's
the shambling corpse of ADV.
Yeah. So
Yeah, but somebody must own like the copyright on that old intro song, theme song,
Right.
the One Piece rap.
it's certainly long enough. The next one comes from our very own Ash on episodes 277 of the One Piece podcast. Greg mentioned how many times Zoro has brought up the idea of a fire sword. On Punk Hazard, Zoro even mentions he'd be interested in learning Kinemon's fire cutting techniques. When Koala was talking to Dragon, she mentioned the weapons they seized from Dressrosa. Or no, Dressrosa. He just wrote DR, so I'm like, is that what it's called? Yeah, I think that's what it's called. I've blocked it out of my memory. I'm sorry. Were made of a special metal called drunken iron ore. My theory is that the ore is only found on Wano, and that Zoro would have someone forge a blade for him out of this metal. I also predict that it will be able to be set on fire, and that's its special property.
Well, that's the kind of thing that Oda would put in the series before introducing it like that.
I don't recall, but was there any like hidden meaning behind Drunken Iron Ore? I remember us discussing whether there was, and I think it was no.
I'm not sure what to make of it, but yeah, I think it's just something that he invented. The only thing I could say, like, as far as my understanding, because I have such a poor understanding of like the different names for Zoro's weapons and which one is which, that I can only assume on Wano that like he's gonna lose some of them and the other ones are gonna change names somehow. It's gonna be like the when you go to a sporting game and they do the like, okay, here goes the ball goes under the hats and now they're gonna shuffle around, and that's basically what's gonna happen with his swords, and I will have no idea which one is which or what they are called
Ed,
again.
Do you know the name of his 3 swords off the top of your head?
It's the Wado Ichimonji, the Shusui, and the Sandai Kitetsu.
If Ed ever forgets the 3 swords Zoro has, he's off the podcast. I said that from the beginning. Next question comes from Death Star Slice. What kind of purpose do you guys think Carrot will serve moving forward? My friend and I came up with the possibility of either her leading the Mink Fleet Division, if you want to call it that, or just having her travel back to Zoe with the rest of the Minks after Wano.
I don't know if there's going to be a going back to Wano.
Going back to Zoe, you mean?
Or yeah, going back to Zoe after Wano.
Yeah, I mean, we never go backwards in One Piece.
Yeah.
I don't think that's ever happened. Yeah.
She's sort of on the boat now, isn't she?
Actually, this is the first time I think we're kind of going backwards in a storyline in Whole Cake Island, because they're going back to Cacao Island right now.
Okay.
Technically, that's the only time I think that's ever happened in the series, but I still don't think that's something.
No, they went back to Water 7 after going to Annie's lobby.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, well, yeah.
I feel like you could definitely make an argument that given what just happened with Pedro, that we'll probably have a kind of moment of truth for Carrot soon, where it's like, okay, what are you going to do now? Like, what is your plan? Because she has just been along for the ride. She's practically a stowaway.
Yeah, I mean, that would at least make me feel a little bit better about what happened last week, and I'm still very angsty about it. But I need to wait and see. It's also, even before I start getting angry about anything, I need to just kind of see how it plays out. Next question comes from Eric, and this is an email. We have moved beyond the sexier segment.
Beyond.
Thank you. You could submit Dis Piece, by the way, if you were a Patreon subscriber. Just let the admins on Discord know, and they will add you to that chat, and we will read your question. Hopefully not skip over it, which if it does, I will. Please blame me again. Don't blame Ed. Stop blaming Ed. So Eric has our first email. To go along with all the other Straw Hat-based questions, if each Straw Hat, Jinbei included, of course, were a magical girl, what would their magical girl name be, and what would their transformation scene look like? Are we the 3 right people to answer this question?
No, I don't think so.
I feel like we should defer this until we have the right people.
Where's Jammer?
Exactly. Yeah.
Blade Maiden Zororo-chan.
Actually, we are the right people, apparently.
Yeah, Zoro would definitely be like the like the Miko, like shrine, the Shinto shrine maiden sort of deal.
The Sailor Mars.
Jammer
Yeah.
actually would be the right person to answer this. He's super
Why not
into
just
what's
Madoka
Madoka
Magica,
Magica.
Yeah.
Yeah. Eric, while you think about it, Stephen, Eric also asks, he's been wondering, what is the name of King Baum's Triance? Is it Jennifer?
No, it's Lady Tree.
That's what I thought. It's not even
that's her name.
creative. It's just Lady Tree.
Lady Tree.
I love how uncreative that is, actually.
Well, in the One Piece world, like that would mean Tree is her name and Lady is her surname. So that's interesting.
So we should
Tree
be
Lady.
calling her Tree Lady.
Tree Lady.
What do we have on Reddit, Stephen?
Okay. Well, we only have 4 questions. So Black Northwind, this is your lucky week. I will actually read both things that you submit. A very frequent and constant submitter of questions. As a female, I get why other females wouldn't like Oda's way of writing them, but in my opinion, it's still better than other series where the females are defined only by their love interest. While in One Piece have 4 females like this.
Isn't there a like this kind of definition as to whether a woman is only defined by her, whether a series is treating their women well, because if they're defined by
Talking about
this...
the Bechdel test?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. Thank you for
No,
saying
that's just if 2
Stephen.
female characters talk to each other about something that isn't a man.
Right.
Although I guess that is kind of what the.
So how
question
often
is.
does that happen in One Piece is, I guess, a good question. I think it happens quite...
I mean, because people
frequently.
don't really talk about romance in One Piece. It's kind of an easy,
Yeah.
like, whenever 2 women have a conversation, they're usually not talking about romance.
Yeah, like, I think
Yeah.
the most recent example, although it wasn't a bath scene, was Nami and Chiffon. And I don't think they talked about romance at all.
They were talking about weddings.
Yeah.
It was before a wedding, to be fair, but
Yeah.
I think, weren't they mostly talking about Lola and... they were talking... I mean, they weren't talking about, like, each other's love interests, but they were talking about kind of the plot details behind the
Yeah.
King of Elbaf, or Prince of Elbaf.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely a whole range of kind of stereotypical writing that we avoid in One Piece by not having, romance be a central part of it. It's sort of like the female characters are sort of behind the line in the sand in terms of like, okay, these are like, you can fantasize about them, but it's not a canon plot point versus other series where it's like, oh, that's the entire point of their character is so that they can hook up with the main guy, or make it seem like they will. And that doesn't necessarily like completely nullify all of the other complaints that we've had, but I do think that is a good point to bring up, because it could be worse in certain ways, by far, easily.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. And the other comment from Black Northwind, I find it funny that in JoJo some characters have bizarre battle cries, while in One Piece some characters have unique laughs. Totally.
Those are 2 things. Yes, they're true.
They are true.
Yes.
Prince of Assassins wants to know, what would be the most implausibly funny ways Pedro could still be alive or resurrected? I've heard one about King Baum jumping in to shield Pedro from the attack. Wow, another King Baum mention. And one where his
Not
pieces, one where his pieces flew all the way to the German kingdom, and Judge addled into being nice/blind because he was hit with Big Mom's thunder, thinks Pedro is Sanji and rebuilds him. Okay, so if Judge is blinded by Big Mom's thunder and he thinks Pedro is Sanji.
Well, we finally entered the true crackpot theory section of this podcast.
Yeah.
I think if we're gonna go full Alex Jones on this, I think the only really acceptable solution here would be is if Big News Morgan swooped in, said, "Oh wow," and just took his coat away as it was exploding, and then threw it away, and then just flew away, even though he can't fly. But for this one moment, he conjures up the ability to fly.
It's my moment. This time, I'll make the news. Yeah.
I like the King Baum theory too, though.
Yeah, I like that one. It's not it's not implausible, but actually just the opposite. But after the last chapter came out, me and Greg were trying to figure out, and I'd said like, and I still think, okay, I'll side with Oda on this one. Like I feel like he does intend to go through with it. But Greg was like, okay, well, what are the ways that it could turn out? What sort of ideas could he have to explain how Pedro survives? And the one that he had that I thought was kind of interesting was the when Prospero does the Iron Maiden, like the Candy Maiden thing, that it's like Luffy blows through it, and so there's just these shards of it, and so like, oh well, what if he blows himself up and then jumps behind this piece of candy metal sort of thing, because it seemed like a very odd type of attack to introduce there, but yeah, I don't know, we'll see.
We will. What's next?
Lastly, Nivers, do you think we will get anything on All Blue in this arc? I wouldn't be surprised if it was on one of the extra poneglyphs, or if Big Mom and Strusen were also looking for it.
I kind of like.
There's no indication of that really at all.
No, but it is Sanji's arc, so
Right.
I feel like if it was going to get brought up in as part of the plot, like this seems like it would be a pretty good place to do it. I mean, there's a lot of people I think that theorize that it is part of, or it represents the One Piece or something like that. There's a very elaborate theory about One Piece world climate change sort of thing, like or geography change or something like that, causing the All Blue to come into existence.
I was thinking about that. I mean,
that would be way more of like a, okay, this is the end game sort of deal.
Yeah, and we know Oars is like the continent puller and
Right.
potentially the moon stuff and the ancient kingdom, and things maybe got reworked, and the world does seem kind of designed. So I think out
I've
of
been
that,
saying that for years. Yeah.
yeah, I think All Blue might have been something that did exist and maybe will exist, but probably doesn't exist at this moment. If you catch my drift there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
What's next?
Next will be.
Oh, that's done. Yeah. So Ed.
Freeze the tweet. I jumped the gun on you.
Yeah, you really cut me off there. What do we have this week?
Yeah, question first from our very own Brian Newton, who says, has this been brought up before? What Sanji's Germa epithet would be if he stayed? He suggests flaming yellow.
That seems good.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
For several reasons.
Sure.
Anyone else? Any
No.
thoughts?
Flaming yellow sounds good.
Yeah, I mean-
what else is it gonna be? I'm like trying to think right now. I don't know.
Baking yellow. Yeah, I don't know.
Buffet yellow.
Yeah.
Would it be yellow? Have we determined? Well, whatever. Sure.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, and there's also his color in the Straw Hats is like navy blue.
Yeah, but they already have red, green, and blue
So
in Germa.
I saw there was a piece of the tweet, and we could do this right now. There's only 3 of us. Chopper's left antler. That question, Ed.
Okay.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Read it.
Hey guys, great work. Was wondering where you would put Zoe in your arc rankings.
So I have the arc rankings in front of me from our, I'm sure these have changed. This is from 2015. Let's remind you. So there's a good way to do this. We're going to see if you like it better or worse than specific arcs. I'll stop from the top. And so I'm going to start with you, Steven. Say, is Zoe better or worse than this arc? And we'll place it. Pretty easy to do, right?
Okay.
So Steven, Skypiea, better or worse? Zoe.
Worse.
Alabasta,
Worse.
Water 7,
Worse.
Arlong,
Worse.
Thriller Bark,
Worse.
Sabari,
Worse.
Drum Island,
Worse.
Dressrosa. Which you
Mm,
want to think about this
ooh,
too? You put it
yeah,
in.
that's tough. That is tough.
Well, the one below that is Marineford, so it might have
Yeah, I'll say worse for both of those.
Punk Hazard.
Better. I'd say now I'm
Okay.
getting warm. Now I'm getting warm.
Logtown. Would you say it's better then?
Yeah.
Okay, so
that's about a good comparison.
So
It would be next to
Sure.
Logtown.
so for Steven, number 10 out of 20.
Mm.
I guess it would be 23. So sounds about right. I think.
Yeah,
Still
I
in
would
top
have said
half.
I would have said just above the median point for me.
Okay, Ed. Here we go.
All right.
Arlong,
do it.
better or worse?
Worse.
Water 7.
Worse.
Marineford,
Worse.
Alabasta,
Worse.
Drum Island,
Worse.
Sabodi,
Worse.
Skypiea,
Worse.
Dressrosa,
Better than Dressrosa.
Impel Down.
Better than Impel Down. Yeah, I like
number 8. It is for you.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I know. I really like. So I don't know, man. Dressrosa is gonna fall if we ever redo these rankings.
I'd put it at number 10 for me, above Dressrosa and below Impel Down. I think sounds about right. I know Steven hates Impel Down. Ed, what's next?
Next question comes from Gustavo Padilla, who says, "Is Jewelry Bonnie the Deus Ex Machina of Whole Cake Island? She hasn't shown up yet to help stop Big Mom."
Yes.
Okay. All right. Next one comes from Quick Quest, who says, "Hey guys, if Yonji tripped and fell face first towards the floor, would his eyebrows spring him back to stand?"
Yes.
I like it.
All right, and the last one from Animate Sam, who says, "In the spirit of getting my first subpoena today, what kind of law would you like to practice in?" Hey, he might just be the custodian of documents. He's not being served, but he got it, and he's got to produce the documents. So, what kind of law would you like to practice in the One Piece world?
Why would I? That's like having a dream world where I do the same thing.
Like, yeah, this is a fantasy world. I'm not gonna. Well, I'm not a lawyer anymore, but I'm not gonna just
admiralty law. Okay.
Right. Oh man,
that would have the most business. It's a world full of water.
You could be a Jag. That'd be pretty good.
Oh yeah, actually that would be fun. There's a lot of suits that probably come.
The world government's Jag Corps.
I want to be a lawyer in the Whole Cake Island territories, like whoever argues about minor infractions like snackalism of private property, just because I want to learn about all the
traffic court.
Yeah, all the various laws that Oda would make up for a weird place like that.
All right, so that does it for Piece Together, right, Ed?
That's it.
Okay, let's round off.
All right.
This has been the One Piece Podcast 486 for September 11th, 2017. Thank you guys for coming on today. We mentioned a few weeks ago about the Hurricane Harvey Relief Fund. I also suggest people go to globalgiving.org to help those in the path of Hurricane Irma, as that affects the southeast region of the United States. Hope everyone out there is safe. Our wishes go out to them. Before we round off, we'll be back next week with our regularly scheduled manga recap and anime recap, which I guess will be a longer version since it is for an hour-long episode. Also want to remind people that our exclusive Patreon episode is online now at patreon.com/OnePiecePodcast, and that our commentary will be up shortly. As I said, there were some editing difficulties with that. We may also have an exclusive episode up there about a certain touchy subject, so please keep an eye out for that. That's at patreon.com/OnePiecePodcast. Steven, how could the good people out there contact you?
You may follow me on Twitter at Translatosaurus, where I retweet stuff and barely ever tweet. So enjoy that.
And Ed, how could the good people out there contact us?
Well, you are Zach_Logan. I am Edward E. One Piece. That's Mr. One Piece to you. No, not really, but I could be. And if you follow me on my Twitter, you know that I'm going through that paste list of 100 anime movies. Watched 3 more this week. I watched Miyazaki's The Wind Rises, which was great. Really, really good. Jinro the Wolf Brigade, which is written by Mamoru Oshii. It's a very good movie. It's very bleak. And then I watched the movie Hal from 2013, which is none of those things. So The podcast can be found at onepiecepodcast.com, twitter.com, youtube.com, and facebook.com/onepiecepodcast. One Piece Podcast is our Skype name. onepiecepodcast@gmail.com is our email address. Send us some piece together at reddit.com/r/onepiecepodcast. Please support us, patreon.com/onepiecepodcast. You can subscribe on Google Play, subscribe on SoundCloud, subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, or call us on our phone number. Zach?
And that phone number is 347-497-MAJI.
Maji.
That phone number again is 347-497-6254. Call anytime.
Call anytime.
With your questions, comments, theories. Thank you guys for coming on today. We'll be back with full gang next week as we go through chapter 878, I believe it is.
Yep.
And anime
805.
Episode 805, the double Sanji versus Luffy fight, which looks really good. So I'm excited for that as well. Remember, new anime opening coming October 1st. That's going to be exciting. That's actually, I think, on September 30th in the United States. So keep an eye out on our website, onepiecepodcast.com, and our social media handles for more on that. But until next week, everyone, my name is Zach.
My name's Ed.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, Stephen.
Bye-bye.
I'm not really going anywhere.
You know.